Welcome to the New Masculine podcast. I'm your host, Travis Stock, and this is a space for men who are ready to move beyond outdated models of masculinity and into something more honest, connected, and whole. Here on the New Masculine, we talk a lot about what it means to heal as men, to reconnect to the parts of ourselves that got buried under years of conditioning. Likely, due to my own lens as a social worker and a coach, most of our frameworks we explore come from the world of psychology or therapy. My next guest, however, comes from somewhere different. Sanud is the author of The Peaceful Power of the Initiated Man, a book that approaches masculine healing by bringing together principles from animism, core shamanism, and tantra into a methodology he's developed called soul bath. If some of this vocabulary is new to you, no worries, it's new to me too, so we'll be on this learning journey together. Simon's focus is on helping reclaim masculine wholeness by dissolving inherited, distorted patterns that have been passed down through generations and reviving something older and deeper within us. Simon also leads and certifies men's work practitioners, training them to guide other men through this kind of transformational work in groups, workshops, and private sessions. I'm genuinely curious about what Simon has found, what it means to heal at a soul level, and what this path looks like for an everyday man. Simon, welcome to the New Masculine.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Such a pleasure to have you here.
Really wonderful to be here.
So let's start where I like to start, which is to start from your journey as a man. We grew up in Western cultures, but we grew up in different cultures. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what it was like for you growing up as a boy and what you learned about what you needed to be in order to be a successful man.
Well, I'd like to jump ahead and say that it took me into my early 50s to feel like I'm actually arriving in my masculine. And it took tantra and shamanism to allow me to arrive in that. And now I'll go back to the beginning, saying that I grew up in Germany, even though my father's from New Zealand and my mother is from Iceland. I was born in Stuttgart, and then I grew up in Cologne, speaking English at home and Icelandic, and speaking German in kindergarten and in school.
And not the typical American story, having three different languages.
Yeah, which it should be. And I also lived in the United States for 16 years. And I remember thinking how sad it is that most immigrants in the 19th century felt like they should leave their original culture and just kind of enmesh themselves and just speak English and just be Americans, because those cultures are really rich, from all over Europe and all over the world. And it is actually something that can give us strength. And case in point, jumping back to me, the Icelandic part on my mother's side was because my grandmother spoke predominantly Icelandic whenever she came to visit. And I also had au pair girls, like babysitters that took care of me, and they spoke Icelandic. And this Icelandic culture was rooted in me through that, even though I was living in Germany. The other aspect of my childhood that is probably interesting to mention is that I grew up in part in the theater, because both my parents were modern ballet dancers. And then my father became a modern choreographer and opera director. So I grew up, speaking of males, in a plethora of different roles that I could observe, from the time I was a baby. And we would have very bohemian get-togethers and parties at home late into the night. And I would be allowed to just stay up with everybody. And people would usually comment saying like, wow, your son's amazing. It's like talking to a grown-up. I don't know why they said that, but I think it's not because of the things I said, but of the questions I asked. And there's one thing that I learned from my grandmother, who was also an author, is to elicit stories out of people. So I always love listening to stories, and storytelling, we'll get to that later, has been a central theme in my life for the two parallel paths that I've taken.
Sounds like there was a real cast of characters potentially around you during all of this time, coming in and out of the home and getting to experience lots of different stories. And, I would imagine, this is where my brain automatically goes, and I think a lot of men do, like a trained ballet dancer and then a choreographer. It's like sort of representing more of the traditionally feminine aspects of masculinity. Or would that feel true to you?
Well, definitely, if you're in the theater and you're whether you're in the acting company or in the opera part of the theater or in the ballet company, you will have a lot of homosexual men, some of which you wouldn't spot as being any different than any of the other men, and some of which who are really enjoying, being that. So I
Yeah,
grew up with
yeah,
both,
yeah.
and I can remember that it was completely natural to have these archetypes around me, and at the same time, looking back, also, I don't recall anything about my father being straight being a problem for all the others that were in the company. So I think he was probably maybe one of few who were straight in the ballet company. But there was no friction there. Everyone was just,
Yeah,
it seemed to be, just from my perspective as a child, it seemed to be that they were harmonious together.
yeah. It's rarely that the straight people's sexuality is the problem, is made to be the problem. It's usually the queer people that are made to be the
Yes.
problem.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So
true.
that makes
Yeah.
sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's unfortunate that, that's what I hear is still the case,
Yeah.
in many areas of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, in terms of archetypes, which we'll get to later, there are, of course, in the arts, mostly the archetype of the lover, whether the lover is male lover is a homosexual or heterosexual or bisexual. This lover archetype is something that, of course, C.G. Jung talked about, and also these guys, Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette.
Mm-hmm.
They wrote The King, Warrior, Magician, and Lover. It's a really great read, and it can really tell you a lot about yourself when you're reading it. If you sort of discover that you're one of these archetypes, but predominantly. And the lover archetype is, of course, the one that connects most easily to his creativity, to his sexuality, and being in the moment. So that is something that I really grew up with. And that is something that I later, when I learned about the archetypes, which wasn't until I came into my 40s to really study this. And I studied it for about 10 years and then gave seminars on it as well, is that I was definitely a lover. And the way to identify that is looking back into your 20s. I mean, if you're older than 30, it's looking back into your 20s and seeing all the things you wish you hadn't done, or sort of shadow sides that you can identify. It's very easy to see which one your basically predominant language might be by looking at the shadow side. I don't know if you've become aware of that. It's an easy identifier. And
Yeah,
for
I mean, I think that the shadow is what makes it very easy often to see the archetypes out there in the world. We're getting to see some of the shadow, like king archetypes out there right now. And so we get to see it easily through the shadow element, more easily through the sort of the light side of it, or the divine side of it. And I think sometimes because our brains have like a natural tendency to look for the struggle or the challenge, like it's sort of that part of us that's looking for what's not working. It's where our minds easily drift more towards being able to see the shadow than to be able to see the light side, or the mature initiated side, and be able to actually celebrate it and honor it in many ways.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it's just one of the easier ways to identify which one you predominantly resonate with. I don't like to say which one you are, because in my experience, I have seen and experienced that we aren't an archetype. We are who we are as a being. And it took me a while to get to that experience, and everyone might see this differently, but we are who we are as a being. And we have a strong resonance to the language of one of the archetypes, or maybe two. And what is predominantly said out there about the archetypes, then to harmonize, it's good to learn the language of all four, so that you have the language for each aspect of life. the earth, the king being related to the earth and creating your life and roof over your head, security, stability, that kind of thing. It's not so much, but that's basically what you can say is the king's job, is to take care of the country, or if he's a CEO, the company, or if he's a father, the family. And you can go through all the different elements that way and say, like, okay, this is an area of life that you're predominantly focused on.
Yeah, they're helpful storytelling elements that help us gather language to understand aspects of the human experience and aspects of the being, but they're not fully representative of the being of a whole person.
Yeah, exactly. I really now see it as, it's basically, you've learned a language. It's French.
Yeah.
It's German, it's English, it's Chinese. And then with that language, then you're able to master something. It's like the warrior really is about mastering self-discipline and being able to develop a skill set and do something really well. It's not actually about going to war. It's just that this, and we'll get to that later, this warrior archetype has been seen as the one who is standing there and is going to war. But really, if you look at, well, what does he really need to do? What is the thing that he does? And it's developing his skill, in this case, to be able to go to war. But it can be, somebody can be really related to the warrior archetype and just be an amazing athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
or he could also be an amazing artist that is just amazingly disciplined. Some of the arts, you have to have discipline. And I would say, actually, that ballet is one of them. You have to be so disciplined. It's like,
probably one of the best examples.
Yeah. You take a few days off and your body is already not quite in that perfect line, especially classical ballet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's take this out of the conceptual and make it a little bit more about your own story. So you were sort of alluding to the fact that one of the ways you were able to identify your lover archetype was through the shadow elements of the 20s. Is there any parts of your 20s or the journey you were on at that point as a man that are worth sharing? Calling you out.
I will share in the interest of learning. And humility. So looking back at my 20s, I realized that the way I was dealing with love and relationships had a lot to do with conquest. And even though I can say that I wasn't really promiscuous, but I can see that aspect in it. I can see that I was into, the impulse was there a lot, to win somebody over, at least to like me, or to have that kind of sexual attraction between each other. And that being more important than actually the seriousness of a mature relationship where you're getting to know the being and you're settling in for a meaningful journey together for many, many years. And even though I did have relationships that lasted years in that time, I'm looking back and I'm realizing, yes, those were typical shadow sides of the lover, which I was grappling with. And people around me also saw me that way, even if I wasn't completely acting on it all the time, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that, because I think it's a common story for a lot of men. I think part of the way we're raised as boys is to not really practice the skills of connection, practice the skills of empathizing with another person's experience, especially a lover's. And so much of early sexuality and relationship development for boys who are becoming men, like in that transitional phase, is a lot about conquest, is about validating self through someone else rather than being able to connect and be there and present with someone. I can even see parts of it in mine where I was trying to fill in my own self-worth through my relationships. Like if somebody just liked me, then I could be valid or valuable as a person. And so I think a lot of us are trying to connect from disconnected places. And so it's important to hear these stories of where we were and how we've grown out of those.
Yeah, and maybe also in the interest of anyone who's listening, where that might be touching something in them, is Ask yourself if when you're getting to know someone that you feel attracted to, whether what your main interest is that they don't just like you, but that they like you a lot, that they are really amazingly attracted to you and that it's just hot. Yeah. And rather than you really want to connect from being to being, you really want to know all of their stories and you really want to be there for them also when they need you. And you're not there out of neediness, but you're in your fullness already. Can you really honestly say that? Are you in your fullness and you're making a bridge? Or do you have this vacuum inside of you where you're really unconsciously trying to bring in energy, life force energy even, to fill you up and make you feel valid, like you were saying? I totally agree with you.
Oh yeah, that is so well describes how I used to approach relationships, and
Okay.
I find myself to be a conscious person with a lot of morals and clarity and wanting to treat people well, and yet I was trying to fill that hole. I wasn't coming from a wholeness place in previous relationships, and that when you recognize that and start to work on that, self-validating, being able to fill that up so that you can come from a whole place, it does change the quality of the relationships you're able to have from there.
Yes, because then you're more present. You are not acting out of what can I say that would make me more interesting right now to that person, and then they're more attracted to me. You're just like, wow, that's really interesting what you said. Tell me more about that. And then really, having this communion really from being to being.
Yeah, it's no longer a performance of who you need to be in order to get that person to like you. It's actually genuine connection and curiosity.
And if I may share also from the bedroom, I was shocked when my my beloved at the time, this is like 15 years ago, when I was in the tantra yoga school, at some point she said, "You don't have to perform." And I was so shocked by that. It took me days to digest that, because that's one of the beauties of a relationship. If somebody can show you something like a mirror, something behind you, a blind spot that you just don't see. And then with one question, she was able to let me see that was what I was doing.
Wow.
And especially in Tantra, it's like, what's the motivation to get into Tantra? For many, it's like to be an amazing lover, right? and unfortunately, it attracts, I think, some men who want to be an amazing lover and who want to bind many women to themselves, because it's often connected to polyamory, which is an amazing concept and an amazing challenge. I lived it for 4 years. And in the end, I had to say, I don't think I can do that,
I'm not cut out for it, yeah.
I'm not cut out for it. But what was interesting about it? It wasn't, I did learn after a year and a half, because I got to know the other man in my beloved's relationship, and I got to like him a lot. I actually dissolved the really burning jealousy that I felt in the first year. It just dissolved by getting to know him more and just being like, oh, it's great if they have a weekend together. I'm really happy for them, and I'm just going to focus on my stuff. But what was difficult...
It's amazing what happens when you connect with the humanity of another person.
Yes.
When you don't see them as an object in your way or competition, when you actually see the human and the being that's in front of you. It's amazing how some of our challenging emotions that we have to battle with and fight with actually aren't present when we're actually in real connection.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
We're talking a little bit about some of the shadows that you uncovered, whether that's through a lover sort of telling you that you didn't need to perform, or sort of a recognition as you look back. What's been the journey for you to heal some of that shadow so that you could show up be in relationship from a whole place and truly connect?
Okay, so that was a long journey for me, because
for sure,
early on, I realized I really need something. I realized that when I was 19, I was like, I need some kind of really serious spiritual path and some spiritual community to heal. I didn't find that until my mid-20s, but then I started, and since then I've been meditating every day. I just celebrated my 30-year anniversary of meditating every day. And that's because I started back then in 1995. Yeah. And I'm grateful to that community and that teacher for installing that in me. But the interesting thing is, and that's part of what I really feel is one of my main things I like to share with people, is that when you're on a spiritual path and you're doing selfless work, you're meditating every day, you're doing chanting, you're listening to a teacher, these are all amazing things that can help you be more grounded. It can help you, experience a community, a spiritual community in a beautiful way. It can help you tap into your magician archetype, or as I like to call it, your air power, where you can tune into knowledge just streaming in. But one thing it didn't do is heal those things that you just asked about. It didn't fill that hole in me. It didn't make me more secure in my relationship. And I didn't get to heal those aspects that we're talking about. So at some point I asked myself, well, there must be something else. And it wasn't until I came into shamanism and combined daily meditation with the specific practices that you do in a core shamanic journey, where you're speaking words and calling up energetic fields of maybe belief systems you have, or calling up a wound intentionally of a soul part, a fragmented soul part that you have. And you then are able to work with that because you're calling it up. You're not pushing it away. And you're not spiritually bypassing it by trying to rise above it. I always do this little, you can't see it, this little sort of trying to fly higher with your meditation to not feel all the mud down there, which is weird because the symbol is with the lotus is that the roots are in the mud. So that's important. It's actually there. But what happens a lot is that we try to meditate more or do more yoga in order to feel better that day when actually we were triggered and an old wound came up. So since I got into shamanism, I combined the two, and what came out is soul bath. It's basically something that you would normally do in a journey, something that you would normally do in your daily practice and meditation, pushing them together and picking out one soul part that you're trying to heal and working with that just 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, but for a few months every day. So it takes discipline. But then what you're doing is you're calling something up so regularly that you're actually able to heal it. So what I had to work with, as you can imagine, with both my parents being dancers, and there's no blame here. I love them both, and I'm grateful for everything they've given me. And I was at home alone a lot, so I had this hole that combined with the lover archetype. Of course, there was this, trying to attract lovers in that way, so to get that attention, but it would never actually fill up that bucket. It just can't, because it's gone again. But with this method of working every day with the soul bath, I was able to call up that childhood soul part. And what I do is actually locate it, because it's so abstract. Oh, it's my childhood soul part. Well, where is it? Well, in shamanism, you realize that your words have so much power that what you say goes. So I just say, well, I call on my childhood soul part to be represented in my left arm. And I put my left arm like this, and then with my right hand, I hold that soul part. And I call up my self-love and let that stream into that soul part. And then every day, every day, every day. And then there are other levels of initiation also, where I go into a healing field in the lower shamanic world, where I call up the healing field of, there's something called the father soul, the lower shamanic world father soul. And it's really a feelable, and I've done this with many other men in workshops, it's a feelable energetic field that shows up in the shamanic journey and offers you the initiation of the energy and qualities of all the harmonious fathers that have ever lived in humanity. And I realize how big that statement is. But in the spirit world, it's just there. And then that field offers you the initiation, and each one in the group journey can then say, yes or just be quiet. And if he's quiet, then nothing happens. If he says yes, then he's given permission for this energy to enter into their energetic field and into their soul parts that actually were yearning for that. We're yearning for that harmonious masculine energy from a harmonious whole father. And then what you can do in the soul bath, the next morning, you call up that same energy field. It's like now you know the phone number or you have the IP address of that energy field. And then you're just sitting in your soul bath and you say like, and I call up my childhood soul part. And now I connect with the lower shamanic world father soul. And I invite the nurturing energy of the harmonious energies of this harmonious father soul to flow into my childhood soul part in my left arm. And then you just sit there. And that's why I call it a soul bath. It's like the Japanese invented the forest bath. And then you're just bathing in this energy and you're just letting time pass and you're just staying present with it. And you're witnessing it. This is what Michael Harner says, who wrote The Way of the Shaman. As long as you're witnessing it, it keeps happening, whatever you call that. And then you can imagine now you do this every day for 3 or 4 months. For me, it took more like half a year. And the changes in your soul part, your childhood soul part, start to heal. And then the most magical part is that you can then say, and I now integrate my childhood soul part in my now cohesive self. That means that in shamanism, in core shamanism, we say that a fragmented soul part is like it's not online. It's not really with you in the here and now. It's not experiencing everything together with you. It's like that part of you, and we have that in the vernacular as well. There's a lot of wisdom in the phrases that we use in language. We say like, well, that part of me, one part of me is still in my childhood, waiting for my father to come home or my mother to come home. Well, that's actually literally energetically on our soul level then the case. Now, when you've healed that part, though, it's like it thaws, and then you can invite it into you. And what is beautiful about that is that people around you notice it. They notice more light in your eyes. They notice that your bone structure somehow fills out more. There's just more of you there.
Wow.
And then you have that for your relationship, for your work, for your vocation, for everything you do. And people notice. Yeah. And the opposite is true also. When some soul part or most of your soul parts are not online, it's like you're not really there. You're a bit zombified.
Yeah. As you're talking, I'm hearing like my brain, as I was talking about in the beginning, my brain automatically goes to like psychology, therapy, those kind of modalities. And so I'm thinking about like the very popular thing that right now around parts work or internal family systems, where we are recognizing the parts within us that are having disagreements about things, that are having different perspectives that cause us to react in certain ways or try to protect ourselves in certain ways. And so many times with a client of mine, I'm talking about sort of learning to, if we have a scared inner child within us that's reacting and it's driving our behavior, that we learn to call up our own healthy father so that we can re-father that child, so that it's not about dismissing him, avoiding him, rising above him. It's actually being in real dialogue with him. And so now you're also bringing in this element that actually has like a physical element to it, where you're holding that part, where you're calling up those parts, that it's not even just your own inner healthy father, which is hard for many people to call up, because maybe we didn't have healthy fathers, or maybe because their fathers didn't have healthy fathers. And so we've had this lack of modeling of healthy fatherhood. And so to know how to call that up in yourself to support that part of you that's afraid or that's scared or that's wounded, it's a tall task. And so I love this sort of concept that you're talking about. It's like, it doesn't have to come from within you specifically. It comes from all the fathers.
Yeah.
All the energetics. I want to pull you out a little bit just to help the listener, because you're so fluent and easy with the language of shamanism and tantra and animism and all that. I'd love to see if I could get you to like kind of pull down some of those words and actually give us as brief a definition as you can. So
Sure.
You've been talking about core shamanism. How do you define what core shamanism is?
So, first of all, I did not define it. It was Michael Harner in the 80s who went and met many indigenous tribes and then noticed what they all had in common and said what the techniques that they're actually using, and one of them is the drum, is what they have in common. And he then called that core shamanism. And it's this type of drum that you see, with these strings in the back. And they use that to go into a shamanic state. So he differentiates between the ordinary state and the shamanic state of consciousness. And then what he noticed all of them do is they go into the spirit world, they meet power animals, they meet guides, and they are able to go into 3 different worlds, or 3 different areas of the spirit world. The lower shamanic world, which is not the underworld or hell, like in religion. It is a very...
It's funny how quickly our brains can go to that, though, because as soon as you said it, I was like, oh, that must be, it must be the dark part. Yeah, okay.
A really bad place. No, it's a very pure place. It's a very beautiful place. It's a very safe place to do classical clearings and healings. And then there's the middle world, which is basically our 3D world facsimile. Basically the energetic side of our 3D physical world, which in spirituality would call it the astral world. And in my understanding now, the astral world includes the underworld of the Greeks and hell of the religions. So that is actually still middle world. And then you can go even further and say like, well, okay, what about the higher realms of the religions? I also see them at the top of the middle shamanic world. But that is just me. It doesn't mean that everyone has to accept that, or that I'm speaking for all shamans and core shamanism. Not at all. It's just my experience, and I'm always very clear on that. And I'm always saying in my workshops, even though when I speak, I usually sound, my beloved always says that, you always sound so like it's the absolute truth. You're so convinced of what you found out. It's true. But I always say, please take anything I say and put it on your mental shelf and then experiment with it. It's much more interesting if you can then find out something that then for you is true and not just like, oh, Simon said this and I now believe that. It's much more interesting if we all experiment and then we can exchange on our different viewpoints. So then above that is the upper shamanic world. And in spirituality, we would think of that as the place where our higher self is. And I would think of it as where our higher soul is. And then a pendant to that, in the lower shamanic world, we have a deeper soul as well. That Paul Francis talks about, finding your deep soul. He's an amazing shamanic teacher who lives in Wales. He's an Englishman who lives in Wales. He has a whole school. And I can only recommend, if you're interested in shamanism, to read Paul Francis and Michael Harner. So those are the 3 places where you can go. And Paul Francis is very clear about that he doesn't go to the middle world, and neither do I. Because in the middle world and in the astral world, you have all kinds. And also, I'm not interested in channeling any beings that are in the middle world. They can present themselves as light beings, and they can have an agenda, and they can actually be entities that are trying to hook you up into some system where they're trying to harvest even your life force. So I don't even go there. And in none of my classes or workshops do I at any point take anybody into the middle world. We always go straight to the lower shamanic world where it's completely safe, or for an eagle's eye overview to the upper shamanic world. Then we have power animals. What are power animals? Well, a power animal is not an individual soul of, like, say, your cat, for instance, that has once lived on the earth. A power animal, like jaguar, for instance, that I work with a lot, is all the wisdom, all the experience, and all the power of all the jaguars that have ever lived. So in the spirit world, there's this kind of like phenomenon that there can be a conglomerate of all this power and experience of one species in one being that you can meet as one jaguar. And then that jaguar can do things with you, can offer you to clear you. For instance, jaguar cleared energy out of this client of mine. We were actually journeying about something else, but jaguar pointed out, I'm seeing here, and they only ever offer this, then it's up to the client to say yes or no. I'm seeing some dark gray energies in your shoulder and in your right arm. Do you want me to clear it? And it's up to the client to say and feel into it. And I explained that beforehand. Just feel into it. If you get a yes, just say yes. So he said yes. And then Jaguar, in the energy body, in the shamanic journey, cut open his shoulder and all his arm and squeezed out this really dark gray energy, like plasma energy, and threw it into the spirit fire, where it was immediately dissolved. And a week later, he calls me, he says, Simon, I've had to take painkillers every day for my pain in my shoulder and my right arm in the afternoon every day for years now. And since that journey, I have not had to take any painkillers.
Wow.
And that is, retrospectively, because it was energetically based. So sometimes with a clearing like that, what is offered is, okay, this is connected to your mother telling you off in a very strong way and sending her negative energy into your energy body. And you are still carrying it around. And this client was 62. This was last year. So that's how long we can carry something with us. So time doesn't really matter. It's the clearing and the healing that matters.
It's taking me now, like I keep using my own reference points to like connect with what you're sharing. And it's like that really popular book out there that's the Body Keeps the Score, which is all about like how the body keeps a hold of experiences and learns to hold itself in different ways. And that healing comes from recognizing that it's in the body too, that it's not just something that's up here in the mind, which we always are relating to ourselves in our current world and Western worlds often through the mind.
Yeah.
But there's this whole element of the energetic body, the body that's been holding some of that as well.
Yeah.
And there are ways, as you're talking about, like in shamanism, to move that energy along so that it no longer has to be stuck there, so that the body no longer has to hold on to that.
Yeah.
As you're talking, I would imagine people are thinking, they're hearing you use language like journey, and they're thinking about like these sort of visual elements, seeing a jaguar. It sounds a little like we're on a psychedelic journey of some sort. My understanding is your work doesn't involve psychedelics. It's a different kind of journey. Is there anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, thank you for that question, because I sometimes forget to mention it. For me, it's so normal to do, about 100 journeys a year, just with the drum.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that that plant medicine can be very powerful and mind expanding. And my sense is that it is an amazing tool for those that want to really break out of their framework and just see the world and experience the world differently. I have not done ayahuasca myself, and I have never felt called to do that. I've experimented with mushrooms in my 20s, but it was not in a setting, and it was not with somebody guiding or anything like that. It was purely recreational. Even so, I have a strong sense of how strong that spirit of that mushroom is, and how strong you have to be to make it through. Or that's how I felt. I felt it was very, it took a lot of energy to go through it. And I learned something from it, and I made some internal agreements with myself. But I also experienced DMT. Have you ever heard of DMT?
Yeah.
Little powder, but in these brown sort of flakes. Looks like tobacco, but you just need a few of those flakes, and you smoke it, and then you are going on a journey for about 5 to 10 minutes. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
You come out a minute later, you're completely clear again. But where you were for 10 minutes, you have no idea how much time that was. Feels like hours, and you're seeing things. But and I read all the books first, and the only reason I took it was like I saw this amazing documentary, and I was like, well, maybe I should reconsider. Maybe this is really valid, And this was like after 20 years of meditation and being a yogi. I was like, well, let me not discard this and experiment with everything. And so I did that for about once a week for 2 months. And I read the books, The Spirit Molecule and all of that. And I made intentions before going on these journeys. I was never able to hold that intention. It was always just like, it was what it was. And my favorite ones were when I was out in nature and I just felt I had somehow connected to the trees, and it was really beautiful. But with the drumming journey, you're never going on this drumming journey just to see what happens. It's not spiritual tourism at all. It is really, you're talking, like me and a client, we're talking maybe for an hour or 45 minutes, and to see what is really alive for you. What is it that would be really great to clear or to investigate to see if it needs clearing, and then healing. And then we get to one really specific part, and then us talking about it already creates an energetic field. And then I even speak that intention again for both of us. And I even ask for permission to take the client with me on this journey. We're both wearing eye masks, so we're completely shutting out the visible world. And the drums, for some reason, they just take us immediately into this field. Many of my clients on their first journey see something, but I always stress that it's not about seeing something. It's really about the process of clearing and healing something. And that happens just by you being in that journey and saying yes to the propositions that are made by the power animals.
Beautiful. That's helpful delineation. It sounds like your work can be a little bit more targeted, where sort of the psychedelic healings that can go along are a little more chaos oriented. Yeah. It can take you in a lot of different directions and be really powerful and really helpful for a lot of people. And yet you're targeting a specific intention and staying with it and focusing on it through your journeys. That sounds a lot like the work I do with horses. I take people and I do in very intentional exploration and have this other being with them that is connected to its own body, that's connected to its sense of its ability to feel the world, its own sensitivity to feel the world, and responds based on how we're showing up, not just how we're performing or thinking we are, but how we actually show up and how our muscle tension is and how our heart rate is. And it sounds a little like that, where it's about like going in at a focused place and having some play, in whether it's through the physical realm of a horse body or through meeting other realms in order to visually have some play to work on that thing that you've agreed upon that is important to work on.
Yeah, that sounds beautiful. I've not experienced work with horses, but I can just imagine that it's really powerful. Like, there are a lot of horses here where I live in Galicia in northwestern Spain, and a lot of white horses. I don't know if that means anything, but when I'm on my walk, and I always just stand there for a while, knowing that some people like you work with horses. So I have a lot of respect for this being there in front of me. And I just sort of try to open myself up and see if anything happens. Usually they come and they want to like sniff you. And then it feels like maybe they're going to bite you as well. So I'm a little bit pulling my hand back. But that's all I've experienced. It just feels like they're very powerful beings.
Yeah, there's something about being next to a 1,000-pound animal that puts us into real presence, because they can bite you, they can kick you, they can be potentially lethal, and yet they're a prey animal and we're the predator technically in their eyes. And so there's this like mutual vulnerability that we step into when we're in a relationship with a horse. And in that, there's a presence that's asked from us that most of us don't live in our lives. We're either focused on the past or focused on the future. And something about being in that presence with that animal brings the nervous system really into the presence. And in that presence, things can surface that need to be resolved, that need to be healed, that need to be looked at, that need to be supported. So, there's so many different modalities. There's the altering effects of taking a psychedelic that internally alters you and helps you see the world slightly different. There's drumming that can take you into those shamanic states. There's the presence of an animal that's that big that can take you into that state. There's many different doorways to get to a similar space. And finding the right one that works for you is definitely the thing that I would encourage most men to look into. It's like, we've all got stuff. We've all got things to look at, and find the doorway that works for you. You have not everybody's willing to not every guy is willing to hire a coach or hire a shamanic practitioner or hire somebody to do it. So you've also written a book, The Peaceful Power of the Initiated Man, that is about giving some of these resources that can be done as a guy by himself, looking at these things and getting practices. let's talk a little bit about that book, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually a nice segue because we also want to get back to the archetypes, right? So
yeah,
I just recently ordered some authors' copies of this book, and it just for me to sort of have it around and be able to give it to people. The intention of writing this book was to give an introduction to the work that's possible on your own, with the power of shamanic technique and daily meditation. And so my intention is to be able to be a doorway and a window for somebody who's never really thought about this before, but always felt like, oh, I should look into that. Spirituality seems, people are talking about this. This seems important, or that might be helpful. Or even somebody's like, I need something. I'm not doing well, and I need to change something. I feel myself in a rut. I feel myself not being happy in my relationship. I feel my beloved is not happy with me as a man. What can I do? So I take the reader, and women are also reading this book, and they're finding it a very helpful view into the perspective of what men have to deal with, and what men's.
Much like this podcast, I have a lot of women that listen to this and find it really helpful too.
Yeah. So this is meant to be an introduction to the two archetypes that we're presented in our media, in our fairy tales, of the tyrant and the weakling, or as I like to call them, the collapsed masculine. And how we
the alpha and the beta. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The alpha and the beta, and the hierarchy that comes with that.
Yeah.
So I just basically explain where this is coming from, and I'll just outline it briefly here. I've been reading about archaeologists in the last 40 years, which seems like a long time, but it still hasn't changed our mindset collectively, that the newer findings, because we're still somehow based on the findings of the archaeologists of the 19th century, I think, in our collective, and that is that our ancient ancestors were savages. And they beat each other over the head, and they raped the women, and it was just brutal, and it was survival of the fittest. And what these archaeologists have found out, it's in this beautiful book that I can recommend by Steve Taylor called The Fall. And he does this amazing service to look through all the archaeological findings and list them up. And it's basically that they found that our ancient ancestors were peaceful. There was no patriarchy. There was no hierarchy. That means they had to sit in circle and decide together by consensus, not democracy. The difference is that in a consensus decision, there isn't one that vetoes it. If one vetoes it, they have to keep talking. In a democracy, if less than half say, no, we're scared, let's not do that, let's not go to war, and it's 51%, the whole tribe's still going to war, even though less than half of it is scared of war. In consensus, that wouldn't happen. If just a few say, no, we don't want to go to war, we wouldn't go to war. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that more respectful of community? So that's what they found out. What changed? 6,000 years ago, in today's Iraq, back then called Sumeria, city-states started to emerge that introduced kingship and queenship, hierarchy, the kings and queens, the priests, religion, deities, monotheism and many gods, and warriors and slaves. Basically, the warriors are also slaves. When we're in men's work and we're calling up the warrior archetype in order to come into our strength, we're calling up an archetype that is enslaved. We're calling up a whole energetic field of all the warriors that ever were, and they all were under the king or the chief. And if the warrior didn't do exactly what the king said, off with his head. So it's a very distinct energetic field that we're calling up. Same with the king. Now we think like, okay, Simon, so probably then we should just call up the king, right? Well, the king is in that hierarchy. Yeah. Because if you call up and you want to be the alpha male, what's your biggest problem? The other guys want to be the alpha male.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like I had my one of the mentors that I had in LA. He had a pretty tough childhood, and they were moving around a lot. I think his father was in the army. So he said, well, what I would do, and you've heard this story before from many guys, get into a new school. I'd ask the kids, hey, who's the toughest kid here? Who's the leader? And they'd be like, that one over there. You'd go over to the guy, not say anything, hit him as hard as he could. And if he fell over, then he had no problems. No bullying for him. Yeah. So that's your problem as the alpha male. There's always going to be some guy going to come up and try to beat you out of your position. Mm-hmm. You're in constant conflict. Now, did we have that before? All the tribes and the villages that they found, for instance, between Greece and Poland, and they found lots of archaeological sites that were 7,000 years old. They couldn't find one battleground. Nowhere where these different villages were fighting each other. What did the Sumerians bring? Battling each other for territory, introducing to the world of all indigenous peaceful tribes. Imagine the whole planet. Introducing to the whole planet, one by one, just spreading out over Europe, spreading east to India, bringing the caste system, which the Dravidians did not have, the indigenous people, bringing the caste system and bringing the worship system and having to pray to gods and work for free and be a slave to, these different priesthoods and all of that. They brought the concept of property and borders. The beauty that we had before was animism. In animism, our ancient ancestors saw everything as having consciousness, everything having a soul. That includes stones. That includes, of course, plants, animals, other humans, the land itself. So in animism, we can talk to the spirit of the land. Like I, for the first time in my life, had messages from the spirit of the land when I lived in Mallorca. And it was very unhappy. It was sad and it wanted help. It wanted the humans, when they got together and celebrate, to also celebrate with him. I felt him as a masculine spirit of the land. So these tribes in animism did not own the land. They lived at eye level with each other, at eye level with the trees, with the animals, and with the land. There is no ownership. And this, to me, is still the truth. Now, even if we're now looking for a place to buy and then maybe build a shamanic center, first thing we're going to do is have some kind of journey where we talk to the spirit of the land where we are before we buy it. Are we allowed to be here? Are we welcome here? And then when we're there, we dissolve the human construct of ownership from you. We liberate you. You own yourself. You're free. Wow. And we are honored to be allowed to live here. Thank you.
This is so much of what you're talking about is why I felt attracted to wanting to talk to you about this, that I noticed that you didn't use the warrior archetype in the title of your book. And I find so many books in men's work and about men's healing bring in that warrior concept. And I'm constantly exploring for myself, why is that? Why are we playing in that space? Why is marketing in men's work all about high achieving men? Why is it always about these certain archetypes that are already well established and present in our world? Why is adding more of that the answer rather than finding other archetypes or bringing forward the power of other spaces or other kinds of people to create a different space? So I really appreciate you bringing up that concept of the warrior being an enslaved being too, and how the mistake that sometimes we make in men's work is to continue leaning on that archetype, or to lean into the king who needs to be the alpha all the time. Because I think we already as a culture value those two so much, and they've gotten us to where we're at. One question I do have, and it doesn't come from a place of a disagreement, because I actually very much agree that my goal is always to sort of continue to undo the hierarchies that we've created and the power structures that we've mixed with masculinity, where we say men are powerful and we've kind of made them synonymous.
Yeah.
But something that I witness, like in my work with horses, is when I watch a horse herd, there are hierarchies. There are power dynamics that play out. I think the natural world shows us those kinds of things all the time in different, like gorilla populations or lion populations. Like you see an alpha, you see power dynamics and structures and hierarchies play out even in the animal world. And I'm sort of curious to know your perspective on if it exists in the natural world, why is it bad that hierarchy exists in the human culture, I guess?
Okay. First of all, thank you for that question, because it is, of course, something that I think about.
Yeah.
And there are scientists that are looking at nature and saying that the Darwinistic survival of the fittest, which I would say maybe is related to the hierarchy thinking of maybe the gorilla, and then, the strongest one will survive and his seed will be perpetuated and the weaker one not. They're starting to question that. So, of course, I think there's both. But just to share with you what some have discovered about trees, for example. For a long time, people working with forests were thinking that when trees are close together, they're battling each other for the light and for the resources on the ground. What they found out is that they're loving to be together. And that
cooperative network, yeah.
Yes, they're actually a sort of social, in the sense of social support network, even with the moisture of the earth. There are times when at one point of the forest there's not enough water coming, and then this one tree will supply sap through a connection of their roots to this other tree. Isn't that beautiful? And doesn't that completely erase or question the survival of the fittest paradigm of Darwin?
Yeah, and I'm all about questioning that. But I also see this at, like, let's bring it back to the horse example, because it's the one I know the most about. It's like they understand cooperation. They understand that the least safe place they can be is alone. They believe in herd. They know of the power of that. And yet they do, even in our domesticated horses, play out hierarchical power structures where when you throw hay out for them, there's a pecking order of who gets to eat first. It doesn't ever mean that anybody is ever left out completely, but they set very clear boundaries with each other. They chase each other off. And so I see both in the horse world, a collective community that recognizes that there is always strength in numbers, and that our well-being is because of our community and our herd. But also within that, they play out power structures and hierarchies in ways that are impossible for me not to see. And so that's the place that I get into, because as a person, as a value system, I want to lower the hierarchies or to dismantle the hierarchies. And yet I see it in nature, and I don't judge it when I see it in the horses the same way I struggle with it in the human populations.
Well, I have the same intention, because I like the idea of being in a tribe and all of us being at eye level. But I have experienced myself as having strong leadership qualities and people wanting me to lead in a project, for instance, a startup project in Berlin. And I was almost always like emphasizing that everybody steps into their own power. In the end, I think it's about the way that it's done and the motive that it's done. So and I think it's really hard for us to imagine, because we now had 6,000 years of traumatization through patriarchy. And so part of, it's what's beautiful is that, people like you and I, we're wondering, how do we evolve into a different paradigm? And I imagine it like this. For instance, the difference between the guru principle, which involves total surrender of the disciple to the guru and the disciple doing exactly what the guru says. I was in this paradigm and I chose to leave it.
Fair
And
enough.
well done. But I learned a lot. So I'm very grateful.
Yeah.
If you're in a tribe and you're doing shamanic work, the shaman, this is what I've read. I haven't gone into an indigenous tribe myself, but this is what I've read from Michael Harner, is that the shaman isn't somehow in a hierarchy above the others. He's just good at doing shamanic techniques. And that's how I like to see myself. So if I'm in the community and I'm really diving in and putting all of my faculties on journeying 100 times a year and writing books about it, then I might emerge as some kind of leader or in the eyes of others. But that doesn't mean that they should just do what I do or that I should tell them what to do. I can be a leader as somebody who is diving into the spirit world and bringing back some knowledge and saying, like, this is really valuable to me, and others might find that inspiring enough. And then I always say, well, now you try it and then experience it for yourself and then become your own authority, because that is what I think collectively our biggest task is right now, to learn to become our own authority. I had to do 5 years of unpicking from being a yogi and really wanting to follow and give up my ego, give myself up in order to reach enlightenment. I had to unpick all of that to come back into my own authority and just be like, well, what do I think is right? What do I feel? What do I connect with?
Well, I think it's what you argue for in the book, that you're like arguing that this work is about healing and sovereignty rather than more achievement or achieving a state like egolessness and enlightenment. It's about sovereignty. There is a sovereignty to all of us and to everything in this world. And empowering that is a new paradigm shift for all of us. We can embody leadership energy that comes from like the king, but we don't have that. As it reminds me back when we were talking about the hole that can exist within the lover who's pulling energy in for life force. The king who has that hole in them is constantly needing others to agree and to believe the way they do and fight for what they believe and their version of it all, without that wholeness that allows the recognition that others have ideas and embody things differently, and that diversity is actually what helps us move forward, rather than something that's a threat to my power.
Yes, beautifully said. And what we can do, because one of the things that I'm very aware of, because I've dissolved so many things for myself in the last 10, 15 years, what do we then have? If we now let go, like for men's work, we let go. Let's say we now all say, okay, Travis, Simon, you're right. We're going to get rid of the king, get rid of the warrior, the magician too, because he's a manipulator, and the lover because he's always sucking energy. No
Just
more.
Get rid of them all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now what? Now we're all blank? No. The truth about this that I found out for my own truth, the vision that me and my beloved saw in an amazing journey when we were sleeping in the forest one night, spontaneous journey, we were shown the archetypes as an overlay. And then I was doing all the research and seeing like, yes, this was actually new. Our ancestors didn't live with hierarchy. This is new. So what was under it? And then in another journey, I was invited to receive and offer an initiation to men in a workshop. And that was about the 4 elements. The 4 elements presented themselves in this journey as actual spirits that are the spirits of each of the elements. So there's 4 of them. And each one wants to help humanity in different areas of life. So the earth element wants to help humanity how to be structured, how to be the rock in the storm, how to have foresight, how to prioritize security and safety over having fun with your friends. The fire element wants to teach us how to develop our skill sets, wants to teach us how to have self-discipline. The air element wants to teach us how to connect with knowledge directly. And for the earth element, the essence of what it is to master survival skills. And then for the lover, it's the water, where you're able to tune into the moment, you're able to tune into the pleasure of life and the playing, and it's telling all of the other three elements, hey guys, don't take life too seriously. We also have to play.
Chill.
Yeah, chill. No, really. Remember.
Yeah.
And it's so important also in couple therapy that you remember to play, you remember to have sensual time together, and you're not just a team that's got a to-do list to master life. So that is what I get to in the book as well. So in the book, describing how to do step-by-step soul bath daily practice, you can call up any entanglement you might have with the hierarchical distortions of the archetypes and just dissolve that for a few weeks every day. You can call up the earth element to heal both shadow sides of the king. The tyrant is the one who needs to basically be brutal to the ones around him to create dominance, to be seen as powerful, even though he's empty inside, or the weakling. It's both earth element. And if you dissolve both of those and don't then choose to have the harmonious king, which I don't believe exists because it's all hooked up into that hierarchy, sorry to say to those that really believe in it, what you're really believing in is not the harmonious king who is in the hierarchy. You're believing in the harmonious, quiet, masculine power of the earth energy in the human. Quiet power. Because you've healed those wounds, because you've gained more qualities, more strengths from the work that you're doing, and you're just secure in yourself. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You don't have to be an alpha male. You just be there. You walk into a room and people feel it. People gravitate to you, and they want you to be their leader, which you don't have to be. You can just say, hey, let's do this together. And sure, I'm happy to be an expert in this field, but you guys have to be in your power with something as well. Otherwise, I'm not staying,
It's a beautiful vision. Thank you for sort of landing our conversation right there in your definition of what the new masculine is. The book is called The Peaceful Power of the Initiated Man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Simon, for joining me. If people want to get a copy of the book, or they want to work with you or train with you as a men's work practitioner, how do they find all of your work in the world?
So the easiest thing is to type in that title on Amazon and just order it in your area, wherever you are in the world. Make sure that it's not, it's .com if you're in America, .de if you're in Germany. And you can find me on soulrise.earth. I was amazed that domain actually exists. So you can actually have, .earth. And I love Earth. So Soulrise, like the sunrise, but soulrise.earth is my homepage. And you can see up there, it's men's work practitioner training, if you want to do that. Or under the offers, there's a free gift where you can do a mini course, which I actually recommend you do while you're reading the book. A mini course for soul bath where it's explained in like 3 different videos. So in less than an hour, you've got the whole concept, and then you can download an audio guide. So then you're off and running within, an hour doing soul bath. And that's under free gifts. And of course, under offers also, there's private sessions. I do private sessions for individuals, for men, for women, for singles, or for couples from this perspective. And I'm always offering a free discovery call so that we can talk and I can get a download of something that I feel that I could offer from my medicine bag of techniques. And then you can go away without having paid anything and just feel into whether you want to do a session or not.
Thank you so much, Simon, for showing up on this call, for sharing some of the things with me that are new for me that I get to learn, and for helping me explore some of those tension points that I'm still learning about. It's been really a lovely conversation. I'll make sure there are links to your website right in the description of this video so people can find all of that really easily.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me, Travis.
If you're interested in working with me, you can go to my website at travisstock.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Traver03. And if you're enjoying the mission of this podcast, you can become a contributor by going to patreon.com/thenewmasculine. Thanks again, Simon, for joining me. And until our next episode.